Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Funny Guys Presents Go Team Venture. We are moving now into Season 5. Before we get there, we need to talk about A Very Venture Halloween. Now, this originally aired October 28th, 2012, so we've now jumped ahead like 2 years since the end of Season 4. Written by both co-creators, Jackson Public and Doc Hammer. And so for this episode, we find ourselves on Halloween. Dermot, Hank dare Dean to basically supposedly go into a haunted house, and Rusty has warned them to stay away from. There he meets Ben, a geneticist who worked with Jonas to develop the boys' cloning project, and worked with Rusty as well. And he reveals to Dean that he is a clone. So I don't know how many times we've either danced super close to this or not, but it's now official. He knows he's a clone. The Order of the Triad is basically hosting a meeting of magic users at the compound, where they perform feats of sorcery to impress each other. While Orpheus is out of the room, the alchemist raises an army of zombies who chase Hank and Hank and Dermot. And the master then has to intervene to destroy them. After lecturing the musicians, he leaves Orpheus to deal with them, who gives him a speech about the spirit of Halloween. As Dean mutely walks back to the compound and stares at it, Orpheus proclaims that Halloween is, quote, "This is the night we discover who we truly are," close quote. And then, of course, the post-credits Hank finds Dean on the compound's roof and asks him what's happened to Ben's house. But Dean has not the heart to tell him the truth. And so we move forward here. So we have a whole flashback sequence at the beginning. Where were you 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago? And then those we all have Brock. And then 1 year ago, we have one, of course, with Hatred, and where the boys fake their death. It makes it look really gruesome. Actually, that happened 2 years earlier when Brock was still there. And Rusty tells Brock to clean this mess up while he gets the clones ready, and the boys are kind of like, what is he talking about? In this last year, they finally actually managed to scare Rusty. The society meeting that Orpheus is hosting is called the Brimstone Assembly, and this is its 331st meeting. Dermot shows up dressed as the Crow, and then Rusty tells him, go back and ring the doorbell properly. And when he's asked about it, he says, I have my reasons, giving this kind of weird hint that he kind of knows that he is Dermot's father. Interesting enough. Now, there is a point when they're getting ready for the Brimstone Assembly that Orpheus, Twilight, and Al get into a whole Craft reference. The Craft, the movie about witches, all that fun one. Baruch Fazal and all that fun stuff. Red Mantle and Dragoon show up, and apparently Red Mantle's been to this before, but Dragoon has not, and he thinks it's a costume party, and he has dressed in what appears to be inappropriate blackface. Dermot, Dean, and Hank, like I said, go out. They're going to old Potter's house. End up sending Dean inside. Hatred apparently is also developing breasts. I guess his hormones are out of balance due to that medication. Outrider and Tatiana are attending this, and many others, and they start doing all these kind of weird tricks to show off, where it gets really kind of creepy with Outrider. Pete and Billy make it through the security to the compound. Pete dressed as David Bowie and Billy dressed as Rusty Venture. They make it to the trick-or-treat, where apparently, because if they make it, Hatred has decided they get full-size, king-size candy bars. Old Man Potter's house is not it's Potter's Field. It's a place where they bury people who, don't have anybody kind of thing. It's, where they bury prisoners and things like that. Potter's Field, people who are too poor to have graves or don't have relatives. Apparently the guy living there, like we said, is a geneticist named Ben. And not only did he help Jonas Venture Sr., but he also mentions about helping Rusty and gives Dean this whole spiel. After he reveals he's a clone, that your father really does love you, and that's why he made clones of you. Hank and Dermot are lying outside when Al casts that spell and are almost grabbed by some of the dead, where we see OSI guys, Guild, Monarch henchmen, the works. I even think we saw Frankenventure or Venture, whatever the monster was that Dr. Venture created. I swear I think I saw him in the group. Rusty, Pete, and Billy and Hatred have all been this time in the little control room with the closed caption, the CCTVs, watching as kids try to navigate the door, to get the door for retreat through the security system, and placing bets. The zombies even at one point start surrounding Ben's house before they're destroyed, giving off a very Night of the Living Dead kind of vibe. Like I said, the master shows up. He also shows up as Santa Claus and seems to be quite confused about what holiday this is. And then finally, like I said, at the end, Orpheus reveals that this is all about self-discovery, which is never what I thought Halloween was about, but what do I know? So that's the end of our intermission there. So we've now jumped ahead 2 years, and when we jump ahead again, it's going to be nearly 3 years when season 5 picks up. But before we get to that, like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. Follow along with us. And now let's move on. All right, folks, we have finally made it to season 5, and it is now June of 2013, whereas we ended season 4 in November 2010. So it's been almost 3 years with very few little intermissions. But this originally aired June 2nd, 2013, written by both Jackson Public and Doc Hammer. And again, folks, this is why it's the longest running Adult Swim series. There are massive gaps. And just like the end of season 4, this is a double-sized episode, 46-minute. So it's been 4 years, it's been almost 3 years since season 4, 8 months since the Halloween special. So we basically we pick up exactly where we left off at the end of season 3. Brock is going to investigate what happened to Monstroso, and Molotov, he finds out, and Monstroso's body is a fake. Spinks basically is now been merged back into OSI, because if you remember, Hunter has now been put in charge of the OSI, so they're all no longer unavowed. And they all basically leave 21 in charge. He's like, oh, it's all yours. It's paid up for the rest of the year, is what Brock tells him. A completely dejected Dean gets back from the Outrider dropping him off from burning that cross outside of his house, and once again tells him to F himself. He then basically tries to decide he wants to be an adult. He takes his bed and a bunch of his old childhood things outside and burns them. And then he and Hank basically separate rooms. He gets the attic. Hank gets the room to himself, his own little Hank cave. JJ calls Rusty to remind him that he's agreed to build the energy shields for his Gargantua 2, which is in progress. So he sources, Rusty is caught in a quick situation where he has to go find this. So he gets a bunch of college kids to come work for him. And he gets a loan from a mega millionaire named Augustus St. Cloud, who we'll learn more about. He is apparently Billy's arch nemesis, and he will be his official arch nemesis soon. The radiation shield emits in stuff that actually mutates the workers as they begin eating the non-mutated assistants, and we'll talk more about that. The Monarch is still in denial about 21 quitting. He believed that Rusty is making mutant warriors and asked Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch to make them some of their own to level the playing field. The interns finish the shield, but lock themselves inside the Eden where they've been living and planning to use the machine to mutate the world. 21 takes control of the situation and sends Billy and Pete to get a decontamination device, and Rusty sold to St. Cloud. He agrees to give it back to Billy if he can beat him in a trivia battle, which he narrowly does. A mutant Dean has been flirting with Dean, Talia, gets him to fight their leader Martin and he wins, being crowned the new mutant king. Rusty releases an improvised antidote. The cocoon arrives, and the Monarch unleashes his own mutants on Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch. Reveals that actually the butterflies are full of an antidote serum that she got from a guy who once accidentally mutated himself into a beetle. The next day, Rusty hands over the cleaned and finished ray shield to JJ. In the post-credits, the Monarch proclaims his love for Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch. Both of them are high on Rusty's antidote, which we'll find out more, which flooded into the cocoon through the butterfly tube. So, like I said, this one picks up right where season 4 ended. We have Princess Tiny Feet Hatred taking her back. She has a new guy, and so he's once again out on the dirt again. Like I said, Monarch doesn't believe that 21 actually quit. 21, aka Gary, now is basically Spink's commander, since Hunter and OSI are basically reinstated. Rusty has a short time, he has basically 3 months to get the whole ratio, which is why he goes and gets the interns. And like I said, Dean is also doing a whole goth phase, burning the stuff on the lawn. We get a montage of them reinstating the facility because he's recruited Pete and Billy and Hatred to help him. Rusty needs the money, so he sells some more stuff to St. Cloud. We find out more about what that is. One of the things happens to be a device they need, and then eventually we actually find out he also sold Helper. Dean and Hatred go to State College, where Dean meets Talia. By the way, voicing also the same voice actress who voices Nikki, and it happens to be the great Kate McKinnon. And we also meet Martin, who will join her, who will be voiced by Aziz Ansari. Dean has lots of inappropriate daydreams about her. They all involve her basically touching his crotch. They were recruited to work into the groups, and they divided into 3 groups by Dr. Venture at the compound. The whites are development, orange are manufacturing, and green are special class, who end up basically be Rusty's personal assistants. And they're all working for what's called Project Palamon. The ray shield is giving off massive radiation, and they're having the student workers, for security purposes, stay on the compound in the Eden, which was previously occupied by that, or when they opened it up during the day camp episode, we came to find out there was like a gorilla in there, and so they basically kill the gorilla and its little kids. It's kind of disgusting and disturbing. We find the Monarch and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch role-playing. He is Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones, and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch thinks he meant Drago from Rocky IV, so there's this whole confusion thing. We later come to find out that he really is missing 21 because he watched Game of Thrones not with Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, but with 21. All special classes are being called some variation on Tom. They all get the same name. And the Eden is quickly developing into a weird kind of H.G. Wells time machine world where there's the Eloi, which are the greens, and the Morlocks, which are the whites and the orange, particularly the oranges, who appear to eat the greens. Dean tells his whole situation about finding out he is a clone, which he hasn't told Hank, but he does tell Talia, who he's continuing to see in secret. She tries to tell Rusty about the mutations. They're getting little extra arms. He does not seem to really care. Then we have St. Cloud is joined the guild. We have Watch and Ward basically there, and we come to find out that his power is money. So he basically bribes his way up into choosing his own arch. And of course, he has a grudge against Billy that goes back to their quiz show days, and apparently getting sniped in an eBay auction. The radiation, like I said, is causing the whites to grow extra limbs, pointed heads, and telekinesis. And the oranges are developing skin like rocks that gets described as like Marvel's The Thing from the Fantastic Four. And apparently oranges, like I said, are eating greens. In fact, now Hanko is back. It's the official company store. And when they're there, one of the oranges is purchasing new clean suits, and he needs to have tailoring done, and he wants to know if they sell student green. And this is a reference on Soylent Green from the great disturbing sci-fi dystopia movie with Charlton Heston. Student Green, I love that one. Hatred, of course, finds out about this because he gets taken prisoner. When he finds out about the whole Student Green, he gets grabbed. And then he's locked up with one of the Toms. When they come to get that Tom, he starts screaming, "It's a madhouse," basically a Planet of the Apes reference. Talia recruits Dean to become their Li Hun Tuk, which is basically their mythical savior. It's kind of a little Dune-ish, a little Lisan al-Ghalib. Challenges Martin to training of his own choosing. He chooses the Indian wrist burns, which he wins, the Indian feast, which is like stuffing crackers, which he wins, and then Indian leg wrestling, which he wins, becoming the Li Hun Tuk. Meanwhile, Gary and them have realized Rusty has realized they've only got like 24 hours after JJ calls him again, and they've got to get the ray shield. And Gary takes command of Billy, Hank, Dermot, Rusty, and Pete to mount a rescue, and they all get their own things. They also discover that the door has been posted with 94 theses, very similar to Martin Luther, and the Protestant Reformation has been posted on the Eden door, but it's basically their demands to be in charge of the world. We do also find during torture, which looks very much like some sort of scene out of Roots, as they're whipping his name and they want to know his slave name, he reveals eventually that it's Courtney. St. Cloud catches Billy and Pete as they're trying to break in and get what they need back. And at one point, when we're in the living room, we'll see that he has He-Man's Battle Cat armor, a TARDIS, and a BSG Viper. He originally wants to make Billy eat a whole bunch of pennies, but they agree to play a quiz show, and he has meticulously rebuilt the set. Billy ends up winning. They even get Helper back in the win. Like I said, who Billy sold. And now the children of Palamon believe that they are now entering their second age that Dean is supposed to usher in for them. Gary ends up in 21 admits that at one point that working for Venture and the Monarch is strangely similar. The Eden, after Dean wins, it turns into kind of like an Ewok at the end of Star Wars Return of the Jedi situation. And when they get pumped gas by Rusty, it turns out to be nothing more than roofies and antibiotics. But what apparently the Monarch unleashes first, thanks to Dr. and Mrs. Monarch, is the actual cure for the mutation. So everybody wakes up having no idea what happened to them. In fact, the post-credit scene, and the roofie gas actually ends up going back up into the thing, and that's why the Monarch and them are all roofied at the end as well. But good double-sized episode, lots of fun. So, like and subscribe, follow along, keep an eye out for our podcast, Off the Reels. This week we'll be talking, we just posted an episode about Hot Fuzz. We'll be talking next week, on Monday. You can catch our next episode. We will be talking specifically about, what is the next one in that trilogy? The Cornetto trilogy, I think, will be at the end of the world's end. So, but before that, this Friday, we'll be looking at episodes 2 and 3 as we continue into season 5 of the Venture Brothers. We'll be looking at Venture Libre and Sphinx Rising. So until then, stay safe, have fun, like and subscribe, and go Team Venture. Say not funny guys again.
Not funny guys again.
No, can you say not funny guys?